Okay, so this is the summary video for Lab 2.4 in week 2 of this course. We were supposed to play around with Nmap again, as well as OpenVAS, which is a vulnerability scanner. I put this in my report, but I used OpenVAS during the internship that I had last summer, and I really like the tool personally, just because I think it does a really good job of showing all the different vulnerabilities that are found on a host during the scan graphically. And then there were 2 questions. I'm looking at this right now on my other monitor, and there looks like there were 2 questions that were also we were supposed to also answer for this lab. The first question was, how many resources does scanning a single host require in terms of both network bandwidth and time? And so when I thought about that, I went back to thinking about time and bandwidth versus the amount of resources you're trying to gain or scan. So with that in mind, I basically noted down that the bigger your maybe host is, or the more resources you're trying to gain, or the more in-depth, this is the one I actually touched on, the more in-depth your scan is going to be, the more bandwidth and you're going to probably end up using. And then as well as for time, the more in-depth your scan is set to go for, the longer it will probably end up taking, just because it's trying to pull more information than, for example, a scan that was just looking for open ports on a network. So that's what my thinking was for the first question. In terms of the second question, which was, based on the sort of vulnerabilities a scanner identifies, what are the limitations of the tools? So again, you can see this in my report, but I thought of it as that there are probably tons and tons of different types of vulnerability scanners within the field of cybersecurity. A lot of them you probably have heard of, some of them maybe you have not. But more likely than not, each scanner is built vastly different than one another. So basically, each scanner is built way different. With that being said, each scanner may have been designed to specialize in finding maybe, for example, an SQL injection vulnerability over maybe any different vulnerability. So that, I would think, is one limitation. I can restate that again. Basically, how each scanner is built differently, and some may specialize in finding bigger vulnerabilities over maybe lesser known vulnerabilities. Also, I believe that a huge limitation to vulnerability scanners is new vulnerabilities. So as you're aware of, and anyone else who listens to this video, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of new vulnerabilities that are being created on a daily basis. And I haven't looked into it much, but I'm fairly certain that with all these new vulnerabilities coming out every day, until maybe a patch comes out for a specific vulnerability scanner, maybe updating the vulnerability database, that these scanners could and probably would miss, if maybe a system was infected by one of these brand new vulnerabilities, it could and would miss the vulnerability just because it doesn't see this vulnerability as something bad, simply because it's a new vulnerability. So again, to sum up that point, that second limitation is new vulnerabilities, in a sense that the scanners don't see these as new vulnerabilities simply because they're new, and maybe they're not picking them up because they haven't been updated. Their vulnerability data chest hasn't been updated. So yeah, I know that was kind of a lot, but I tried explaining that as best as I could. I have a whole write-up within my report for this week. So yeah, thanks for listening, and I hope to see you in the next video.